The sound wasn't just a voice, it was a bomb. One moment, I was humming, wiping the kitchen counter. The next, a woman's sugary tone filled the room from our speaker. "Can't wait for our Paris trip, my love." I froze, the cloth falling from my hand. Leo, my husband of 12 years, lunged for his phone as if it were on fire. The silence that followed was heavier than any noise. I could hear my own heart hammering against my ribs. His face, usually so composed, was a mess of panic. Then the lies erupted, tumbling out too fast. "A client. She's unhinged, a stalker. It's a sick joke, Maya, I swear." His voice was shrill, his eyes darting everywhere but mine. I didn't trust myself to speak. Words felt like shards of glass in my throat. I simply turned and walked to our bathroom, the click of the lock echoing like a gunshot in the profound quiet. I stared at the woman in the mirror. She was pale, her eyes wide with a hurt so deep it was a physical ache. The beautiful, perfect life we had built was a lie, and it had just been vaporized. The night was an endless, dark ocean. I lay in our bed, the space beside me cold and accusing. He was asleep on the couch, or pretending to be. My mind was a frantic, buzzing hive. That voice played on a loop. "My love," I slipped out of bed, drawn to the living room like a ghost to its haunt. His phone glowed on the coffee table, a Pandora's box. We had set up a shared family cloud years ago, for convenience. Now, it was a trapdoor into a hell I never knew existed. My hands shook so badly I mistyped the password twice. I finally navigated to his photo stream. And there it was. Not a suspicion, but a concrete, colorful reality. Dozens of pictures. Leo and a stunning blonde, their arms wrapped around each other, laughing in front of the Eiffel Tower. The timestamps were from his critical business trip to Frankfurt. A strange, cold numbness washed over me, dousing the fire of my pain. This was no longer about heartbreak. This was a crime scene, and I was the lead detective. With a chilling calm, I began downloading every image, taking screenshots of every intimate glance. My hands grew steady. The evidence was mounting. I needed a name. I needed to give this ghost a shape, an identity. At dawn, I opened my laptop, the blue light harsh in the dark room. I went through his LinkedIn connections, my stomach churning with every click. And then I found her. Stella. Her profile picture showed a bright, ambitious smile. A junior marketing manager at a rival firm. The pieces clicked into place with a sickening finality. I created a fake profile, a friendly, generic professional named Anna Green. I sent Stella a connection request, my heart pounding a violent rhythm against my ribs. While I waited, I scrolled through her public life. And there it was, a post from a week ago. A gushing, poetic tribute to her soulmate, her rock. Her face was turned away, but the man's hand on her shoulder was as familiar as my own. It was Leo's hand, resting on the exact same sweater I'd bought him for his birthday. A tiny notification popped up, a simple sound that screamed volumes. Stella had accepted my request. The door to her world was now open, and I was stepping through. Leo came home that evening carrying a massive bouquet of my favorite flowers, his face a masterpiece of contrite concern. "I am so sorry about that insane text," he began, his voice a low, soothing murmur. "She's a client who developed an unhealthy obsession. I've had to report her to HR. It's a professional nightmare." He looked right into my eyes and lied with the ease of a man who had done it before. I made my own eyes go soft and wide. I let my shoulders slump in feigned relief. "Oh, Leo," I whispered, letting him pull me into a hug. His familiar scent, once a comfort, now made my skin crawl. That night, as we sat watching a mindless show, I discreetly opened the voice recorder on my phone and slid it between the couch cushions. "I just need to hear you say it again," I said, my voice gentle, almost fragile. "This Stella, there is absolutely nothing between you? It's all in her head?" He sighed, the picture of a weary, misunderstood executive. Yes, my love. It's all a fantasy she's constructed. You're the only one for me. I stopped the recording. His lie, crisp and clear, was now saved in a newly created, password-protected folder I named Project Phoenix. From the ashes of my old life, something new would rise. Something fierce. Project Phoenix began in earnest. Before I put my own career on hold to support Leo's startup, I was a sharp financial analyst. I knew money never lied, it told the truest stories. I started with our joint checking and savings, then dove into the darker corners of our finances. I found a secret credit card statement, mailed to a P.O. box I didn't know we had. The charges were a roadmap to his deception: boutique hotels in the city, intimate dinners for two, and even a receipt for a delicate gold necklace I had never seen. Then I found it, a hidden bank account, its existence a ghost in our financial machinery. My blood ran cold as I saw the transactions. Every single month, a large, automatic transfer was sent to an entity called Apex Holdings. I didn't recognize the name. The question echoed in the silent, dark room: where was our money, my money, really going? This was no longer just a story of a broken heart. It was a story of a meticulously funded double life. I needed to understand the enemy. Using my Anna Green profile, I started a casual chat with Stella. I was just a new connection, a friendly face in a vast digital sea. We talked about the challenges of marketing, about our favorite coffee spots in the city. I carefully, subtly, steered the conversation toward dating. She was more than eager to boast. She revealed she was dating a wealthy, older man who spoiled her with gifts and exotic trips, but she also had a side piece, a guy she described as conveniently clueless and always buried in his little startup. It's perfect, really, she typed, a winking emoji following the words. He's so full of himself, he has no idea he's not the main event. It's almost too easy. The irony was a physical blow, so sharp it stole my breath. Leo, the brilliant, charismatic CEO, was the clueless side piece. He thought he was her prince, but he was just her pawn, her distraction. For a single, dizzying moment, a wave of pity for his foolishness washed over me, before it was swallowed by a colder, harder resolve. He deserved everything that was coming. My focus snapped back to the money. The mysterious monthly transfers were all destined for Apex Holdings. The name sounded powerful, official. But my research, skills honed from my old job, quickly revealed it was a shell company, a ghost with no employees, no office, just a name on paper. I dug deeper, pulling the legal registration documents from the state database. My heart stopped, then restarted with a painful lurch. The name listed as the primary owner and director was Ben. Leo's best friend since college. His business partner. The man who had eaten at our dinner table 100 times, who I considered a friend. Why was Leo funneling our family's money into a company owned by his partner? The question was a dark, swirling vortex. Was Ben just helping Leo hide an affair, or was I standing on the edge of a much deeper, more dangerous conspiracy that threatened to swallow me whole? Leo had always been careless about logging out of the home computer, a habit I'd once found endearing. Now, it felt like a fatal flaw, a gift from the universe. I opened his email, the screen glowing ominously in the dark office. My fingers were like ice. I searched for the email chain between him and Ben. What I found there was a different kind of betrayal, one that went beyond the heart and straight for the throat. They weren't just discussing Stella or transferring money. They were meticulously, coldly planning to sell the company. The company I had helped build from a sketch on a napkin, the company I had funded with my own savings in its fragile early days when we ate ramen for dinner. They were going to sell it and systematically, legally, cut me out of the profits. One email from Ben was burned into my mind. Given Maya's non-involvement in recent years, our lawyers are confident we can structure the sale to minimize her claim. We'll be set for life. A clean, sharp fury, colder than ice, filled my veins. The betrayal was now complete. He wasn't just stealing my past and my present, he was trying to steal my entire future. The entire company's massive, inflated valuation was pinned on a new, revolutionary software platform called Nexus. It could process immense datasets and predict market shifts with an almost supernatural accuracy that had investors salivating. And then, like a lightning bolt from a clear blue sky, the memory returned. Years ago, restless and missing the intellectual thrill of problem solving, I had written the core algorithm. It was a fun side project, a complex mathematical puzzle I'd solved over a few rainy weekends, scribbling on our living room whiteboard. Leo had seen it and his eyes had lit up with avarice. "This is pure genius, Maya. Let me test this at the office," he'd said, so convincingly. I'd agreed, thrilled he valued my mind. I never thought to draw up a contract. I never signed over the intellectual property. It was just my idea, and I'd shared it with my husband. I rushed to the hall closet, my heart pounding a war drum, and found my old laptop buried under a stack of old photo albums. I plugged it in, praying to a god I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. The screen flickered to life. I searched the files, my breath held in my chest, and there it was, my_nexus_algorithm_final.v1. I owned the crown jewels, the very heart of his empire, and he was utterly, blissfully oblivious. It was the biggest mistake he would ever make. I drove 20 minutes to a convenience store in a town I never visited, my hands clenched tight on the steering wheel. I bought the cheapest prepaid phone they had, paying in cash. I remembered, with perfect, vengeful clarity, a private equity firm called Blackwood Capital. A few years back, they had made a ruthless, hostile bid for the company. Leo had ranted for weeks, calling them vultures and pirates who didn't understand his vision. Now, I needed pirates. I needed their ruthlessness. In the deserted parking lot, using a voice modulator app that made me sound like a robotic, genderless stranger, I called their main number. I spoke clearly and concisely, offering no room for doubt. I told them about the secret sale Leo and Ben were orchestrating behind the board's back. I revealed the critical vulnerability. The Nexus software's IP was contested and not securely owned by the company. "The foundation is rotten," I said, my digital voice flat and cold. "The time to strike is now. Make a strong, aggressive offer." I ended the call and powered off the burner phone, tossing it into a public trash bin a mile away. The first stone had been cast into the pond. Now, I would watch the ripples become a tsunami. To win a war, you need an army, and armies are ruinously expensive. I met with my lawyer, Angela, a woman whose gaze could cut steel and whose mind was a trap of legal brilliance. We formulated the plan in her soundproof office, the air thick with strategy. Then, I made the moves that turned my entire life into collateral. I liquidated the stock portfolio my grandmother had left solely to me, my final, emotional safety net. I went to the bank and, with Angela's formidable presence, secured a massive, terrifying loan against my half of our home. Signing those papers felt like stepping off a cliff. I was risking everything, my entire financial security and the roof over my head, on a single, audacious gamble. But I was fighting for my future, for the justice he thought he could deny me. When the final, staggering wire transfer landed in my new, anonymous account, I didn't feel fear anymore. I felt a surge of grim, unshakable power. My war chest was full, my weapons were sharpened. I was ready to lay siege to the castle I had helped build. The external pressure began to warp him, revealing the weak core beneath the polished exterior. The surprise, aggressive takeover bid from Blackwood Capital had sent Leo and Ben into a frantic, disorganized tailspin. The confident, charismatic CEO I knew was replaced by a snappish, irritable stranger who carried the stink of desperation. He started taking his incandescent fury out on me, his safest target. "You have no idea what real pressure is," he exploded one night, throwing a stack of unopened bills onto the kitchen counter. "You live in this perfect, cushioned little bubble, spending the money I break my back to earn. You are completely, utterly out of touch with the real world." I stood there and took it, my body rigid, my face a placid mask. I didn't cry. I didn't defend myself. I didn't remind him of the years I spent building him up. And secretly, in the pocket of my robe, the voice recorder on my phone was running, capturing every venomous syllable, every condescending remark. Each insult was another piece of armor, another layer of steel plating my heart. The mask was off, and the real Leo was so much uglier than I had ever allowed myself to imagine. It was time for Stella's perfectly curated world to feel the same devastating earthquake as mine. From my fake profile, I sent her an anonymous, untraceable message. I attached a neat, devastating package of proof, screenshots of family photos, public marriage records, everything she needed to see that her wealthy, older man was not only married but had a family with 3 young children who looked nothing like her. In the same moment, with a few clicks, I sent an identical, anonymous package of evidence to the man's wife. The detonation was instant and spectacularly public. Stella's social media transformed from a curated gallery of glamour and designer brunches into a chaotic, unhinged mess of sad song lyrics, furious, vague booking rants, and then, tellingly, radio silence. Her perfectly crafted image was in ruins. Then, the desperate, panicked barrage of calls and texts to Leo's phone began. I watched it light up like a Christmas tree on the kitchen counter, his face growing more ashen and strained with each vibration, each ringtone a nail in the coffin of his composure. His tidy, secret affair was now a messy, humiliating, public scandal, and the stress was eating him alive. With Leo completely distracted and emotionally compromised by his collapsing personal life, I turned my full, analytical gaze onto Ben. I'd always had a quiet suspicion that his high-stakes poker nights with the guys were more than a harmless hobby. I dove into the company's smaller, less audited expense accounts, the ones used for petty cash and team morale events that nobody ever scrutinized. And there it was, hidden in plain sight. A clear, damning pattern of small, regular payments to an online casino, cleverly disguised under bland, boring labels like software license renewals and strategic planning retreats. Ben was quietly, steadily embezzling company funds to feed a gambling problem he kept well hidden from his best friend. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. I had him. I now held powerful, undeniable leverage over both men. Leo was vulnerable because of his affair and the intellectual property time bomb. Ben was vulnerable because he was a thief, a traitor to his own partner. They were both in a cage of their own making, and I held the only key. They just didn't know it yet. The external pressure I had orchestrated reached its boiling point. Blackwood Capital, armed with my precise and damaging tips, launched a formal, hostile takeover bid. It was official, public, and brutally aggressive, splashed across financial news sites. The board of directors was forced to take it seriously, throwing Leo and Ben's secret, backdoor sale plan into complete and utter chaos. They were like ants under a magnifying glass on a sunny day, scrambling in every direction with no coherent strategy. At the same time, as per our meticulous strategy, my lawyer used my anonymous shell corporation, Phoenix Rising LLC, to submit a separate, compelling competing bid. We were a mystery, a dark horse with seemingly bottomless pockets, which made the nervous and confused board even more curious and open to persuasion. They were now facing 2 serious, unsolicited offers, and Leo was rapidly, visibly losing his grip on the company he loved more than he ever loved me. He was no longer the king holding all the cards, he was a desperate piece on the chessboard, and I was finally, triumphantly the one moving all the pieces. In a last, desperate, and sloppy attempt to save themselves, Leo and Ben tried to force through their own fire sale to a different, less scrupulous buyer, accepting a bargain basement price just to get out from under the pressure and maybe walk away with something. But they were a crucial step behind, always reacting, never anticipating. My lawyer, Angela, was a predator, and she had already served them with a formal, devastating cease and desist letter. It stated, in clear, unemotional, and bulletproof legal language, that the core algorithm powering the Nexus software was my intellectual property, backed by dated source code and documentation. They had no legal right to sell it, license it, or include it in any sale of the company. The letter promised a swift, public, and catastrophic lawsuit that would destroy any remaining value if they proceeded. Their rushed, Hail Mary sale collapsed into nothing overnight. No buyer, no matter how reckless or greedy, would touch a company that was about to have its primary asset, its very reason for existing, surgically removed by the courts. I had not just blocked their path, I had collapsed the entire tunnel around them, burying them in the darkness of their own greed. With the specter of a multi-million-dollar intellectual property lawsuit hanging over it like an executioner's axe, the company's valuation went into a nosedive, a total freefall. The board of directors was in a state of pure, unadulterated panic. They saw the negative headlines, the plunging investor confidence, the abandoned partnerships, and they saw only ruin and personal liability. They needed a savior, any savior, to avoid total catastrophe and professional shame. My shell corporation, Phoenix Rising, made its final, masterful move, a brutally low, take-it-or-leave-it offer. It was a fraction, a pittance, of what the company was worth just months before, an almost insulting sum. The board, seeing no other escape from the abyss, their own fortunes and reputations on the line, voted unanimously and with palpable relief to accept. I was in my kitchen, stirring a cup of tea I had no intention of drinking, when my phone rang. It was Angela. "It's done," she said, her voice calm, final, and utterly victorious. "The papers are signed. The wire is transferred. The company is yours." I hung up the phone. My hand was perfectly, completely steady. I looked out the window at the garden we had planted together, the rose bushes I had nurtured. His kingdom, his legacy, his everything, now belonged to me. The hunter had become the owner of the forest. The day before the all-hands meeting, I didn't pack a bag or rehearse a plea. I prepared for a coronation, for a takeover. I hired a severe, no-nonsense personal stylist who brought a rack of powerful, elegant clothing. We chose a sharp, impeccably tailored crimson pantsuit that looked and felt like battle armor. I then worked with a voice coach for 2 intense hours, learning to lower my nature. I'll pitch, to slow my cadence, to breathe from my diaphragm and make every word land with weight, authority, and unshakable calm. I stood before the full-length mirror in my now silent bedroom, my reflection a stranger I was growing to admire and respect. "My name is Maya," I said, my new, deeper voice echoing firmly in the quiet room. "I am the new owner and CEO of this company." I practiced my walk, the stride of a leader, not a supplicant. I practiced my posture. Spine straight, shoulders back, chin level. I practiced the unblinking, direct gaze of someone who was done asking for permission, for attention, for respect. I was shedding the skin of the betrayed, supportive, invisible wife. I was stepping into the skin of the ruler, the architect, the victor. I was becoming the storm he never saw coming, and I was ready to make landfall. Leo received the formal, company-wide email from the board. A mandatory all-hands meeting with the new, anonymous ownership. He was nervous, pacing the living room and running his hands through his already disheveled hair, but his ego was a stubborn life raft in the churning sea of his failure. "It's just a formality, a meet and greet," he told me, trying to convince himself as much as me. "They'll need my institutional knowledge, my relationships. They don't understand the business or the culture like I do. This is probably their way of offering me a promotion, a bigger, more strategic role to help with the transition." He puffed out his chest, smoothing down an expensive tie over a shirt that was slightly wrinkled, so utterly sure of his own indispensability. I simply smiled, a small, closed-lipped, knowing smile, and took a slow, deliberate sip of my coffee, the rich aroma a small pleasure in my new reality. I didn't offer a single word of reassurance or agreement. Let him cling to his delusion, to his fragile house of cards. It would make the final, shattering collapse of his world so much more complete, so much more satisfying to witness. I walked through the gleaming, modern lobby of Vance Innovations, for the first time in years, and it felt like crossing a border into a new country I now owned. I wore the crimson suit like a uniform of office. My hair was styled into a severe, professional knot at the nape of my neck. My makeup was flawless, subtly accentuating my eyes, making them look harder, sharper, more perceptive. Employees I recognized from long ago Christmas parties and summer picnics did double takes, their whispers and stunned glances forming a hushed, confused soundtrack to my determined march. Is that Maya? Leo's wife? What is she doing here? Why does she look like that? So powerful? I didn't meet their stares. I didn't break my stride to offer a comforting, wifely smile. I walked with a purpose I had never felt before, straight to the main conference room, the sound of my heels on the polished marble floor a steady, ominous drumbeat counting down the final seconds of an era. The air itself was thick with a palpable, electric tension you could almost taste. The massive, glass-walled conference room was a sea of anxious faces, every single employee crammed inside, a low, nervous hum of speculative conversation filling the air. I saw Leo and Ben sitting in the very front row, looking artificially smug and self-important, as if they were the guests of honor about to be celebrated, their body language a pathetic attempt at projecting control. A senior, stern-faced partner from Blackwood Capital stood at the podium, soberly adjusting the microphone. "Thank you all for gathering on such short notice," he began, his voice echoing in the suddenly, eerily quiet room. "We are here today to introduce you to the new majority owner of Vance Innovations." He paused, a master of dramatic effect, letting the suspense build to an almost unbearable degree, his eyes scanning the crowd before landing directly, unmistakably, and purposefully on me. Leo's eyes, arrogant and bored, followed his gaze. His smug, confident smile melted away in an instant, replaced by a blank, uncomprehending confusion, as if his brain refused to process the image it was seeing. The man from Blackwood gestured firmly toward my aisle. "It is my distinct privilege to present your new Chief Executive Officer, Maya Vance." I stood. I walked calmly, slowly, purposefully to the podium, feeling the weight of hundreds of stunned eyes. I took the microphone from his hand, my grip sure and steady. I turned and looked directly at my husband, my gaze locking with his. I watched, in exquisite, slow-motion detail, as his face lost every single drop of color, his jaw going slack with a pure, undiluted, earth-shattering shock that was more satisfying than any apology could ever be. The room was so silent, so utterly still, I could hear the faint rustle of someone's nylon jacket in the back row and the frantic, stuttering beat of my own heart. I looked from Leo's horrified, ghost-white face to Ben's, which was a contorted, sweating mask of sheer, unadulterated panic and dawning terror. I leaned into the microphone, my voice clear, cold, and projected to carry to the very last row, leaving no room for doubt or question. "My name is Maya Vance," I announced, the words falling like stones into a still pond, creating ripples of shock. "As of 5 p.m. yesterday, I am the majority owner and chief executive officer of this company." I let the immense, unbelievable weight of that statement settle over everyone, watching the dawning understanding and amazement on 100 different faces. Then, I turned my icy, unwavering gaze to the two men frozen in the front row. "My first official executive action is to terminate Leo Vance and Ben Carter for gross misconduct, breach of fiduciary duty, and attempted fraud against this company and its stakeholders." I gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod to the two large security guards flanking the main door. "Please escort them from the building immediately. Their access is revoked, effective now." A collective, sharp gasp sucked all the air from the room as the guards moved forward with professional efficiency, each taking a man by the arm, and led my stunned, speechless husband and his treacherous partner away in a walk of utter, profound, and very public shame. The sound of the conference room door closing behind them was the sound of a chapter ending forever. After the gasps faded and the stunned, heavy silence began to thicken, I spoke to the room again, my hands resting calmly on the podium. My voice was softer now, more inclusive, but it still carried an undeniable, firm authority that commanded attention and respect. "I know this is a tremendous shock," I said, making deliberate eye contact with a few familiar, nervous faces in the crowd, people I knew had suffered under the old regime. "I know that the past leadership created a culture of fear, secrecy, and exhaustion. But that ends now. Right now. Today, this company begins a new chapter. A chapter defined by transparency, by mutual respect, and by shared success." I then laid out my immediate, concrete, and exciting plans. I abolished the predatory, mandatory unpaid overtime that had burned out so many good people and shattered their work-life balance. I announced a new, generous, and transparent profit-sharing program, ensuring that every single employee, from the janitor to the lead engineer, would benefit directly and fairly from the company's growth and success. The silence held for a moment longer, a fragile bubble of uncertainty, and then it broke. One person, a young woman in the second row whom I remembered as a bright intern, started clapping, tentatively at first. Then her neighbor joined, with more force. Then, like a dam finally breaking under the weight of long-suppressed hope, the entire room erupted into thunderous, roaring, cathartic applause and cheers. They weren't just clapping for a new boss. They were cheering for their liberation, for the fall of a tyrant, for the respect they deserved, and for the hopeful future I represented. It was the sound of a phoenix rising, and it was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The divorce proceedings were swift, brutal, and entirely, overwhelmingly in my favor. My lawyer, Angela, presented the judge with a devastating, meticulously organized and cross-referenced file of evidence. The photos from Paris, the hidden financial records and secret bank accounts, the audio recordings of Leo's verbal abuse and repeated, detailed lies. Leo had no defense, no leverage, and no money left for a protracted, ugly legal fight. The company was legally, unquestionably mine. The house, the asset he had been so keen to fund with what would have been my severed stake, was awarded solely to me. He was forced to agree to every one of my terms, including an ironclad, punishingly strict non-disclosure agreement that legally forbade him, under penalty of massive financial damages, from ever speaking my name or discussing the circumstances of our divorce in any public or private forum. He moved out of our home a week later, a hollowed-out, broken man with a single suitcase containing the meager scraps of his former life. I stood in the quiet, empty foyer, watching his sad, slow-moving car disappear down the tree-lined street for the last time. I didn't feel the hot, giddy rush of victory or the cold, sharp sting of revenge. I felt a profound, deep, and lasting peace, a quiet that settled in my bones. The air in the house itself felt cleaner, lighter, as if a toxic fog had finally lifted. I was free. 1 year later, the company, now rebranded as Apex Forward, was more profitable, positively reviewed, and ethically run than ever before in its history. We were featured on every major, top 100 companies to work for list, and our innovative, people-first culture was a case study in business schools. I was on the cover of a prominent, glossy business magazine, smiling with a confidence that was no longer an act or armor but my core, unshakable truth. I was in my bright, sunlit corner office, the entire city skyline sprawling gloriously before me like a promised land, when my personal phone buzzed softly on the polished teak of my desk. It was a text from an unknown number. Maya, it's Leo. I've lost everything. The apartment, my car. I'm drowning in debt and I can't get a job. Please, I'm on my knees. Can you find it in your heart to give me a job? Anything at all. A janitor, a mail clerk. I'm begging you. I read the message once, my face a calm, expressionless mask. I felt nothing, no pity, no anger, no smug satisfaction. He was a stranger, a ghost from a past life that held no power over me anymore. I simply selected the text and pressed delete, watching the pathetic words vanish into digital nothingness, erased from my world as completely as he was. I then powered the phone down completely, silencing the last echo of that life. I walked to the massive, floor-to-ceiling window and looked out over the city I now commanded, the empire I had saved and built anew. My city. My company. My future, built with my own 2 hands, my own intellect, and my own unbreakable will from the ashes of his betrayal. My husband cheated. So I bought his company and fired him. And it was just the beginning.